Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our today's webinar. And with this, I would like to welcome everyone to all the panelists, audience member, and everyone joining us today for this webinar. And thanks for joining us today and for taking time out to know the most relevant thing which world is also talking about. I am Saili Agre, a senior consultant working at P Manifold in energy and utilities team. And I am joined by my senior colleague Vikrant Vaidya, who is partner and lead at P Manifold. He possesses 21 plus years of experience in automotives and he has worked on the vehicle powertrain analysis, product efficiency, vehicle designing, and all. So yeah, and he will be moderating our today's session. So yeah, the flow of webinar will be first we will give you a context presentation which will be talking about the topic of today's webinar, and then we will be starting with our speaker introduction and finally a panel discussion. So yeah, just to give a context also, and whole reason to put this today's webinar is that there are lot many unknown things about the way we look at hydrogen and its application in mobility. So until now we have been talking about EV so far, and now suddenly everyone is talking about hydrogen in transport. And many states also in India, we can see they have taken the initiatives and the interest also in deploying the hydrogen vehicle. So we thought this is the appropriate time to bring this topic on the open public forum and to have the discussion to talk about some of the fundamental questions and to answer some of the fundamental questions on how the efficiency of hydrogen in mobility is, what are the financial implications, what are the environmental impacts, and how the future of hydrogen in mobility looks like. So yes, starting with that, does hydrogen holds the key to transportation decarbonization, and by when? So yeah, first starting with the global scenario of hydrogen. If we all are aware that hydrogen has been in our use from the very early days, and it has rich experience in many applications. Right, we can see some of the applications here as well. Right from the hydrogen filled balloons to now in the modern days space exploration. So hydrogen has been widely being used. If we look in the overall numbers, the 2021, the global hydrogen demand is 91 million tons per annum, and which is expected to grow 6.5 times by 2050 and going to around 600 million tons per annum of demand. These are the projections by many other organizations like Hydrogen Council, BNEF, where they have also counted overall net zero part. And if we have to look into how much hydrogen will overall imply in the global energy demand, it is around 22%. So yeah, and if we relate this with the overall sectoral demand of hydrogen, we can see that among all the sectors, mobility is the one where it is exhibiting the maximum growth. And we can see CAGR growth of around 11%. And in terms of absolute number, the hydrogen share will be 215 million ton per annum, which is accounting to almost 34% of the global hydrogen demand for that year. So this is how mobility has seen the exponential growth in hydrogen, yeah, mobility application. Then the question arises like why hydrogen is gaining so much traction in mobility, and what are the benefits of hydrogen which are the potential game changer for this application. So coming into that, here we have listed few of the benefits, going one by one into each, like zero CO2. As we all know that hydrogen fuel cell generates electricity through electrochemical reaction which happens with hydrogen and oxygen, and it gives the output as the water vapor only, which is the considered as a clean source of energy. So yeah, even when we look into the refueling time, it has comparable refueling time as that of IC engine, and this has the significant advantages with respect to EV, where we have to charge for an hours. So yeah, that is also refueling time is the one which is the most significant. Then we know that it has the high energy demand, which means a small amount of hydrogen can carry so much of energy, and that is the reason why it is giving and having the application in the longer range applications. So that is how, even when we look into the cooling requirement, it operates in the lower temperature. So even the cooling requirement is low, which can leads to the better efficiency. Similarly, it is suitable for many ambient conditions. It has well efficiency positive. We will go deep into this in our subsequent slide. On the supply chain perspective, unlike electric vehicle where we need the rare earth material like lithium, cobalt, here hydrogen is being used, which is available, abundant in nature. So yeah, to an extent, supply chain is mature and high hydrogen quality. Yeah, so these are some of the benefits which are bringing that traction. And then question arise that if all is there, then where in what application of mobility hydrogen will make sense. So if we look into the transportation sector, all kind of alternate fuel does exist, right? Like even electrification, hydrogen. So each has its advantages and disadvantages, and based on the and each of these application do have certain operational characteristics. So based on the suitability of what kind of operational characteristics my application have, what are the range requirement, what are the cost, what are the environmental implication, the long-term sustainability target. So based on all these parameter, we have to take that decision, like which is the uh, alternate fuel which will be more suitable for that particular application. For example, EV is not appropriate for long distance because it will have the high because the range, there is a range constraint, and if we have to go beyond the range, there has to be a trade-off with the payload capacity. So that is where hydrogen makes sense. So this is how we have come to the notice that there are advantages and disadvantages for each of the application. Based on the suitability, we then come to a point that which is more suitable for what. Yeah, and here we have given the details of what is the in hydrogen in comparison to alternate fuel, how it does it stand. So here we have 5 different alternate fuel: biofuel, CNG and LNG, BEV, battery electric vehicle, H2IC and H2 fuel cell. And here we have given the sensitivity of the performance, like in each of these parameter, how does it perform. So in terms of CO2, it depends on how my feedstock is getting produced, right? So in biofuel, what is the source of biomass? Similarly, here we do require electricity. So what is the source and what is the grid mix for producing that electricity? Similarly, here we require hydrogen. So what is that feedstock which has gone into? Is it gray? Is it green? Is it blue? So based on that, our CO2 intensity varies. But overall, we have come to notice that here CNG and LNG perform comparatively medium to low with respect to others, because it also has some of the leakage concern where methane has been leaked and it is more GHG potent gas, and yeah, harmful also. So yeah, in terms of CO2, this was the overall performance. But if we look into the other pollutant which comes into air quality, is the aspect. So there BEV and H2 fuel cell doesn't has a tailpipe emission, whereas rest do have. So yeah, in terms of fuel cell, hydrogen, as we all know, that is the costly as of now. And yeah, in terms of efficiency, if we look into battery electric vehicle has the maximum efficiency. We are also looking in our next slide. And this efficiency matrix has a reverse phenomena with its cost. So higher my efficiency, uh, higher my cost. So that is how higher my capital cost. So this is how it is linked. And because my here in BV efficiency is also higher, fuel cost is also lower, it is giving me lower operational cost in our TCO, which we can also look into our next slide. In terms of space requirement and payload capacity reduction. So as we know here, weight of battery is the additional add, and that is why the payload loss is happening. Whereas here, yes, hydrogen tank will be needed, but comparatively it will have a lower payload loss, and that is how the sensitivity vary. Even in the refueling time, these are almost comparable, whereas in BEV we do require hours to get it charged. Similarly on the infrastructure cost and the requirement. So yeah, this is overall comparative analysis they have tried to show. Then going into deeper of the efficiency aspect. So we do have well to tank, which is from source of production to delivery, which is tank, and then tank to wheel, which is from delivery to use. So how my efficiency are varying. So in case of the ICE vehicle, uh, once my crude oil is extracted, then in refining and its transport, 12% of efficiency loss does happen, 10 to 12%, and then it is delivered at a petrol station or the delivery tank, and then from there when it is going in the vehicle and at the operational level, we can see 75% of losses in heat and other losses, and useful energy which ultimately comes to drive is 13%. So this is how in IC engine the overall well to wheel efficiency is 13%, whereas in electric vehicle at transmission and distribution loss, charging loss, all that account to, and then considering the motor and other losses also, the useful efficiency comes to around 80 to 82%. Whereas in FCV, it is much better than ICV, but less than EV. It is 32%, where conversion of hydrogen to electricity and then electricity to mechanical energy losses, and apart from that, transmission and distribution in the hydrogen value chain. These are the losses which are being considered. And again, this overall efficiency number are approximate, and even this can differ based on our driving pattern, on the loading pattern also, and on the route, like is it uphill, is it downhill, because on that also regeneration is defined. Yeah. Coming into TCO analysis, so as I have mentioned, these is the TCO we are presenting for a 35-ton truck, where these are the key assumptions. The truck capacity GVW is 35 ton. What is the energy consumption? Here we are considering the range per day as 330 kilometers per day, and for hydrogen we have considered the green hydrogen as the source of hydrogen and taken the cost for the same. So as of now, as of base year 2022, if we look into the FCV has the overall TCO of coming to 140, 139, which is 60% more than diesel and 50% more than electric. So yeah, but in coming year, due to the cost reduction and the other aspect, we can see that it can meet and threshold of means electric truck can have and benefit it at 2030 for H2ICE and at 2040 for FCV. So these are the benchmarks, yeah, where we can do the break even. So this is what we can see that by the year 2035 and 40, yeah, this particular hydrogen will have lower TCO with respect to electric and other alternate fuels also. So yeah, and even in terms of the environmental impact, if we have to see, then again, well to tank and tank to wheel here we are showing. So in case of ICE, we do know that uh, most of my emissions are happening at the operational stage. This has again accounted only the in-use emission and not the during vehicle manufacturing emission or the end of life emission. So these are all the emissions at the operational stage of the vehicle life cycle. So in production, what is the source of production of So emission during crude oil extraction and refining, which are around 220 to 250, and this range will vary based again on yeah, what is the source. And at the operational stage, these are coming to, this is again for 35 tons, so it is 1100 to 1250 grams CO2 per kilometer. In electric and FCV, we know that there are no tailpipe emission, but at the source, the emission will come from production of electricity. And again, here the range vary, like what is my source of production of electricity, what is my grade mix. If it is fully RE, then, and then what is the percentage of RE mix in my grid. So based on that, this range will vary. And for FCV, if I have to do, so this again depends on how my hydrogen is getting produced. So again, this range will depends on what is the source of my hydrogen production. And based on that, this range will come. Currently, at a present stage, most of the hydrogen is getting produced by the SMR technique, where we use the natural gas. But in future, which is projected as 600 metric ton, we do have the green hydrogen plant, where we'll reuse fully RE in for the hydrogen production. So these are overall life cycle emission. Then this is a case study where we are presenting if we will use on a particular route, if the truck will go. So if we'll use electric truck, what are my findings? And if in we'll replace that electric truck with FC truck, fuel cell or hydrogen truck, then what are my findings? So overall battery size requirement, how much it will be, what will be my payload capacity, what will be my refueling time, what will be my overall journey time. So these are the parameters through which we can define. So for a truck, 35-ton truck, which has the daily run of 300 kilometers, my overall battery size is coming to 300 kWh, which will have the loss of payload capacity as 3.5 tons, which is 15% more than the what is my IC payload, which is overall 25.5. And then my refueling time will be coming to 2.5 hours with this much of charger rating. And then overall journey time will again go high. It will account to overall, this is basically overall on-road time, which is my journey time plus my refueling time. So this is 9 hours. But the same application, if we replace with the fuel cell truck, then how much my battery size will come, how much my payload capacity. So we can see the comparable and less numbers here. So this is how the battery weight and range has the impact, and on both, and which application, which fuel is suitable based on what are my operational characteristics. So yeah, this is the overall context setting. And now I request Vikrant to take it forward and yeah, proceed with our panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saili. This is kind of what the context we would like all of you to have in audience for us to get into the panel discussion. What I would request you to do is, although during the webinar, sorry, you will not be able to ask the questions by unmuting yourself, but please do drop in those questions into the chat window.
Sure.
So that we can take them towards the end. But with
Sure.
that, let me start off the panel discussion. First of all, introducing and welcoming our speakers today, starting with Dr. Thipse. He is a Senior Deputy Director at Automobile Research Association of India, ARAI. Is kind of looked upon as the authors or the maintainers or the people responsible for having regulations, particularly pertaining to the automotive or transport sector in India, in terms of the vehicle, in terms of the other aspects around the vehicle to a certain extent, and we'll get more details from him as we go through. He's also actually a chair on many of the standards committees run by Bureau of Indian standards. And it will be great to hear from you, Dr. Dipse, today. Then we have Karthik Atmanathan. He is an industry veteran, worked through Ashok Leyland in engineering and also later product deployment. He has now taken up the role of Professor of Practice at IIT Madras and also works closely with the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office at Government of India. We again have very good insights on how hydrogen will affect the supply side to a certain extent, but also which use cases, what kind of problems the hydrogen is expected to solve. Not every problem will be solved by hydrogen, but at the same time, how we bring out the best of it to serve our specific purposes. And then we would also have Kurt Conrad. He is yet to join. It's a little early. He is based out of Ohio. He is the CEO at SARTA, that is Stark Area Transport Authority, Road Transport Authority. He has overseen the deployment of not only battery electric buses but also fuel cell buses in particularly the city intra-city use, but also some of the peripheral districts around the Stark area. And it would be great to hear from him the experiences, on-ground experiences he has had running the hydrogen fuel cell buses, and also understanding how sourcing of hydrogen is happening there, how filling and dispensing of the hydrogen happens, and how green is the hydrogen today, and what are the roadmaps in terms of getting it completely green in terms of the hydrogen supply. So welcome all of you and thanks for joining us today in this webinar. If I may start with you, Karthik, to get kind of the discussion going forward from where Saili left off. We often talk about some of these applications where battery electric truck doesn't make sense. We saw the loss of payload. I would say there are applications where we do have even more running that 300, 350 kilometers a day. And the battery electric truck, if we keep on adding battery capacity, it starts becoming unviable for the truck operator with the given payload to actually make money, to actually have the enough amount of goods moved through this particular line of business. So which of these applications do you see in terms of trucking, but then also more broader, if I go in fact, a couple of slides back also, where we looked at trains, we looked at even the aviation. So there are many modes of transport which are also being explored in terms of viability for hydrogen. So if I may start with you in terms of how do you see hydrogen playing a role in transportation? What kind of problems do you see solving?
Yeah, can you hear me fine?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that this is a question which will continue. We really don't know the answer, right? And because you don't know the answer, you should not rule it out. So that's the logic here. So this is something which is going to stay in the context of when are you asking this question and what are the competing technologies. So today, at a generic level, we are seeing payload loss, right? But how much of the market segment is utilizing full payload? So if you see, let's say you sell 100 trucks a year, 20 trucks per year are probably sensitive to payload, or is it 10 trucks, or is it 30 trucks, right? So that is one data point. The other one is today you're comparing it to a battery. If I had spoken, if we had this webinar with lead acid batteries only being available, and your lithium batteries not being available, the discussion is very different, isn't it? So you lose not just payload but also pay space. So you'll not have space. So we seem to be discounting the fact that in the next 10 to 15, this is the first time ever in the world where batteries have become meaningful. Lithium, people are prospecting. Everybody kept panicking, saying no lithium, lithium, and finally you just chose to go to your garden and dig a little bit and you find lithium everywhere. You never prospected for lithium because it was not a very important mineral for us earlier. Now you're prospecting and you're finding it all over the place, including your own Kashmir and Karnataka. Now I think it's some part of state EV policy to claim that you have lithium in your state. Right? So let's say you find something and something happens and you're able to crack an aluminum ion. You get 3 electrons per ion. Your paradigm is as big a shift as in lead acid to lithium ion. You will have energy densities which are close to double, and you'll have charging speeds where you'll be able to pump in about 3 to 4 minutes, right? So the context is continuously evolving. So I think it will be very naive to commit a business plan or a policy which takes hydrogen for granted. Similarly, it's also very dumb to not incorporate it in your plan. So this is a dynamic stage. You're going to have to keep your eyes open and be dexterous. This is unfortunately not a choice. Everyone, whether you're a vehicle manufacturer, whether you're in the fuel business, it's all very nice to say, no, 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 hydrogen is the future and there are pilots happening. Hyundai took the trucks all the way to Europe. And within 6 months, they've moved away from green hydrogen because it was simply not makeable. And they had to go for other hydrogens, right? So I think there are segments which are going to find this beneficial, contrary to $1, etc. Even if it's at about $2.2, we see hydrogen making money sense for a significant number of applications, significant number of distances. Any truck that does about say 80,000 kilometers per year, the hydrogen at $2.2 makes better sense than battery electric, right? So but once again, there you have assumed battery electric is not going anywhere and it's just going to see another 30% improvement or whatever. So this is something which is very difficult to guess, and all prudent businessmen, if this is the scenario for them, they it's like saying, I'm a truck maker, I'm seeing high potential in haulage market, so I won't go to the tipper market. Nobody does business that way. He addresses all the markets because he is not very sure how the market shares will move. Same thing with this. The businessman has to cover himself for both hydrogen and battery electric. Between hydrogen ICE and fuel cells, I don't know what the numbers you guys have. From what we are hearing, both at IIT Madras and among all the gossip circles, right now, if you get let's say 10 kilometers in fuel cell, you're getting about 7 kilometers in hydrogen ICE. And everyone believes that the 10 should go up to about 14, 15. And the 7 has potential to go up to about 10, 11. So hydrogen ICE, in terms of number of kilometers per kg of hydrogen, is definitely going to be less compared to fuel cell. But fuel cell has been, it's really a very complex system. And I don't know about others. I used to be chief engineer of vehicles. I don't like such complex systems on a vehicle which keeps running all the time. If it is a stationary thing, it's okay. You can have all those fancy pipes and tubes and all that, and live with it. But this is a perpetually moving vehicle, and it is a money-making machine. It's not some personal transport kind of thing. So fuel cell, even though the numbers look better, the efficiency numbers, I'm very at least the fuel cells that I see today on vehicles, they're extremely scary things. It's like seeing an IBM computer in 1977 or something. It's just too many wires and hoses all over the place, and makes you feel very insecure if you're the chief engineer. If you're an engineering guy or a testing guy, it's easy. But it comes back and bites you if you're a chief engineer or a marketing guy, right? You have to have a product which has a life of 10 years, 12 years out there. Otherwise, you'll find it difficult. So, and we don't have evidence of that either for battery electric or for fuel cells right now. So yeah, so what are the segments? What's the potential? I think it's extremely dynamic. And if the same four of us meet 3 years down the line, we'll be giving extremely different theories. And Sayali's PowerPoint would have extremely different curves, right? So, but we need to be aware of this. And we just can't give up on hydrogen, but we need to be aware of this. I think that would be my first cut response.
Sure. Thanks, Karthik. And we also have some of these metrics relatively clearer in terms of battery electric vehicles and battery electric trucks, where we say minimum kind of this amount of mileage per day kind of starts qualifying, but that clarity is not there yet on the hydrogen. Again, the prices, we have made some assumptions, shown some curves, as you said, they might change tomorrow. But if that kind of transition does happen, if some of these specific applications at least come out with that kind of clear case, as we see for electric trucks today. I move to Dr. Tipse next to try and understand how do we cater to it. We saw those orange boxes at the bottom where we said filling and infrastructure requirements. So how do you see this panning up in terms of hydrogen is not that easy to handle, and we are already, I mean, when we talk about LNG, we already talk about lot of infrastructure and lot of challenges, and then hydrogen is probably one or two steps even further. So would like to hear your thoughts on what do you see happening on this front.
Yeah, thank you, Vikrant. Basically, I fully agree with what views were expressed by Professor Karthik. He was absolutely bang on. It's a mixed bag of solutions. It's not one solution which will fit all the requirements. One thing I want to say about hydrogen as a general comment, what India is looking for is, I think it is pursuing green hydrogen in a very big way. But actually, I would prefer that we start working with what we have rather than some aspirational thing. So we should first start working on blue and gray, which is already available in the country. And if we work on that, actually it will solve the economic part of it, because it is much cheaper, it is much easily available, and maybe that in terms of the scalability of green hydrogen projects or the setting up of infrastructure will be much simplified if we use this kind of, if I may say, slightly lower quality hydrogen. And many of the applications do not require very high purity hydrogen. So when you are going for green hydrogen, you have to make an investment in solar and all those, and everything is very expensive. And there is ROI that is not going to come immediately. So all this will kind of delay, or it can defer. One can say, if a person is like, for example, trucking is a very commercial segment. So people would really like to see the cost come down very quickly. It has to be affordable. So if we now talk green hydrogen, right now everybody is putting it on an average 400 to 500 rupees a kg. And maybe with players like Reliance coming in, the cost may come down in the future. But still, if it is 3 to 4 times that of a CNG truck, it is not going to be easy, because people try to compare apple to apple, and other things. And so that is one aspect. Second, you rightly said safety is one very critical aspect when it comes to hydrogen, because the flammability characteristics or the leakage tendency, embrittlement tendency towards steel, these are all matters of concern. Now, when we are using this fuel, hydrogen as a fuel in a truck or that kind of application, please understand that the operator is not up to, I can say, he's not sometimes even educated, or he is not having that experience or the kind of troubleshooting skills which was there earlier with the diesel trucks or those kind of things. So it is a very complex machine, and now with all the OBD, IUPR, all those kind of requirements because of the stringent regulations coming in, we are trying to go align with Europe, but in that process we have made the vehicle very complex, and it is not easy to operate that vehicle also, or troubleshoot it for that matter. So the roadside mechanics and all cannot really repair such a vehicle. So this is the one big challenge which we see. And apart from that, as far as the infrastructure is concerned, we have not even zeroed down on the pressure of filling. Right now, we are sticking to 350 bar, but the entire industry is asking for 700 bar pressure, because that will make the trip economical or economically viable. Because when you have more pressure, you can carry more fuel, you can increase the range. Straight away, the range gets higher, and that gives a return. Now, especially when we are looking for trucking kind of application, range is very critical. The fellow cannot stop the truck all the time and keep filling. So it is not feasible. So these are some of the things. And then safety related aspects on the vehicle, wherein there is firefighting or there is kind of, all kinds of safety devices such as flame trap and all. These are something which are really going to be very critical when it comes to hydrogen. Another point which I want to say is the concept of jugaad in India. People are very smart at fixing quick fixes, and such kind of solutions are very dangerous when it comes to fuel like hydrogen. So people have the tendency of using, cheap parts, spurious components. In the field, there is a lot of irregularities going on and all kinds of things going on, and it is very difficult to control such a situation. And God forbid if that kind of situation happens for a hydrogen vehicle, the results would be really catastrophic, and there will be a lot of safety incidents which will again tarnish the image of hydrogen as a fuel. That is a major worry which we have, because if we see, unfortunately, safety becomes the last priority when it is operating. If economics is the first priority, safety becomes last priority. Such kind of attitude which we saw earlier in case of CNG also, for example, a lot of vehicle fire and all those leaks and all. So those things have to be controlled very important. It's one of the major things. And consumer education is very critical, because we are offering this as a technology to the users, but are they really equipped to know what is the difference? Is it really is he aware that he's carrying a fuel which is having a lot of safety implications? So all these things have to be looked into a holistic perspective. And the scale up of the infrastructure, unfortunately, is very slow. So we really need to invest into it. Like for CNG, for example, right now we see that only few cities have it. So last 20 years, we were struggling for proper CNG implementation. Now, one can say that at least 20-30% of the OEM fleets are on CNG, and they are producing CNG vehicles because the availability is increased. So I don't know how much time hydrogen will take. National Green Hydrogen Mission is talking about that. But still, there is a long way to go, I feel. And we should not rule out any other options also. So I have think that we should not rule out diesel also ideally, because diesel will continue to be one of the major propellants for the trucking industry. Apart from that, there will be natural gas, electric, and even I won't rule out EV also, because in some applications, if you see, efficiency of EV is much higher. And there, even like small trucks, India is a very unique country. You have different kind of trucking means is a very vast area. So you have trucks which are doing simple tasks such as taking vegetables from the vegetable market up to the vendor. So that is requires a small truck, ACE kind of vehicle, which is very unique to India. And then you have large trucks which are multi-axle trucks which are going in very far-flung areas. So it's a very wide this thing, and there are multiple solutions which could be possible. And best fit is what will be available at that time, which will be cost effective, that customer will take. So definitely one cannot rule out anything. I fully agree with the earlier speaker's views that there are a lot of solutions possible. But at the same time, I would like to say hydrogen, yes, because it's clean. It is definitely one of the best fuel. So efficiency wise also it is good. And people are to somewhat extent now comfortable using gaseous fuels because of the CNG experience. There is a definite case for hydrogen. But again, a lot of factors will affect the economics, the safety, infrastructure. So these are my thoughts on this.
Sure. Yes. I think the overall thing that emerges and oftentimes we talk about it is there is no silver bullet solution to any of the problems. And secondly, things will not happen overnight or suddenly, and we will have to look for even some of the stopgap solutions, some of the hybrid quote unquote solutions going into the transition overall to where we want to be. In that context, Karthik, if I may address the next question to you, you of course talked about IC engine and fuel cell in terms of hydrogen usage, even did that comparison to a certain extent. But as a manufacturer, truck manufacturer, sorry, as a truck manufacturer, how do you see these technologies pan up? You talked about fuel cell and IC engine. Now, IC engine also has this unique capability of running on a mix of fuels, and we do have standards where we are talking about initially going with mix of natural gas and hydrogen, probably slowly ramping up the percent of hydrogen in that fuel. So kind of a flex fuel or blended fuel approach like we had for ethanol as well, or like we have for ethanol as well. So, but how do you see OEMs committing themselves to some of these technologies and having to balance in terms of how the trucks are sold? A lot of trucks in India are not committed when they are bought. They are not committed to a very specific application. So, how do you see this pan out for the manufacturing sector, the truck manufacturing sector?
Yeah. See, multiple fuels, etc. I would expect any sensible OEM which is doing business for growth and profits with a commitment to the overall cost, but not commitment for venture capital funding, right? So it's your business decisions are driven by the profit and loss account and balance sheet rather than the valuation, right? So if you look at such OEMs, they would go to the extent of proving the base technology or going a little bit further and going up to product development. I would not expect them to even complete homologation across their entire matrix of vehicles. So this would be standard strategy for any of these powertrains, not just the combustion engine, hydrogen-based combustion engines, or I would say this is true for fuel cells. I would say this is for biodiesel, for battery electric, everywhere, because they have to spread themselves thin, both financially and in terms of number of people, right? You don't have unlimited resources. No business does. So you have to rationalize now. And when you rationalize and spread it, there are two, three things, right? It's a subjective call. There is no clear-cut logical way you can decide these things. You don't have that data point. So you will be taking a subjective call, and some of them will be late and some of them will be early based on the luck that they had when they took their strategic call. The other one is, it's also very easy to now start picking holes with those guys, saying, well, I'll just choose to discuss biodiesel alone with that guy and say you're not ready, there are no models in the dealership, etc. It's a convenient discussion to have. That's where we should leave it. We should leave it as a discussion and not as an evaluation of that company's commitment or performance, right? So the OEM will want to go far enough so that they don't lose out to the market. And also, and trust me here, I've now seen significant behavioral patterns between companies, vehicle OEMs abroad and in India. And if you see an India-owned company like, let's say, Mahindra's or Tata's or Ashok Leyland's or Hero's, the boardroom meetings and the management meetings are very clearly in country first. They do not do the kind of stuff that OEMs do in the US and Europe and all that. There's no, very often the OEM, we have seen them sitting on the same side as the government and same side as the public, right? It's a very responsible set of owners that these OEMs have, and they're committed to things. CSR might have come today, but these guys have been donating for all these decades. None of them have stayed away from that. All of them have been. So it's a part of their way of life. So it's a different concept here. So they'll go as far as they can, and they might have different levels of risk-taking capability or different levels of size. But they will go and commit to the extent that they can on each of the technologies because none of them are clear. But of course, if you catch me today and I'm a truck company owner, I would have minimal commitment on biodiesel because I'm not even seeing supply chains being discussed in detail, right? But if you talk to me about hydrogen, I'll commit much more because there are people talking about the supply chain and investing there already. And to Dr. Tipse's point, there are these people, I even saw one from Mr. Dhoni. So there's no point in electric vehicles unless you electrify the grid, right? So I sit. And the grid guy says, what do I do greening it? Because these guys are not electrifying. And he will sit. So everybody will continue sitting because nobody is able to take the overall buck other than the government. And so everybody just sits. So you electrify your truck and finish your job, na? You stop talking about the grid. You do your job. Don't commit too much, but finish your job. Similarly, in hydrogen, finish everything, and the source of hydrogen can be handled later. The green can come later. You finish your other hydrogen stuff, and you keep it in place. You've got your storage, you've got your dispensing protocols, you've got your communication protocols, you've got your safety protocols, you've got your vehicle development and everything is in place. The source of hydrogen changes over a period of time. Don't give up that, but don't delay the start here on account of that not being ready, right? So this is the game that OEMs play today. So they are able to guess this, and so they are able to play a game where they send as much as possible to the promising fuel powertrains. So you've got money exposed to fuel cells, you've got money exposed to combustion engines, hydrogen combustion engines, you've got money much more exposed to powertrains, battery trucks. So why are they doing it? I mean, the evidence is quite there, right? To show me the number of guys who are actually vending LNG. Show me the number of guys who are actually talking about vending LNG. As and when it picks up, these guys are not idiots. They'll not lose market share. Immediately, they'll quickly put the LNG models in place. So the OEM response in this fuel game, that response lead time is much, much shorter than the fuel supply makers' response supply chain time. So these discussions should actually be happening with the fuel guys, not really with the vehicle guys and ARAI, etc. Because the response time, you say something has happened and hydrogen is coming in less than 8 months. ARAI will go sit with DHI, work out the testing facilities that are required. They'll work with MORTH, finish all the CMVR TSC work. 8 months, you give them the money and the people, 8 months and 10 months, they'll be ready to start working. But you need to give them that clarity and you need to give them the money and the people. And they know how to go about it. They'll just finish it off. But for IOCL to bring hydrogen to Namakkal Sangagiri road, it's one hell of a job. So it's a fuel guy challenge. It's really not an OEM guy challenge. The response time for the OEM is much shorter. So the fuel guy has much more time to respond. So he needs to start getting into this discussion. Mercifully, they are talking about it. But I think it's the automotive guys who are available for webinars. So you call us.
Yeah, fair point, Karthik, because we also have seen how the BS4 rollout itself was impacted by the availability of the fuel more than the availability of the vehicle. So I do agree it's a fair point. And there, I think if I may bring in again Dr. Tipse from what he was talking about. Let's start with what is available. Let's start with gray hydrogen. Let's start with see if we can have blue hydrogen, have that mix like electricity. I think you may correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it doesn't matter whether it is blue, gray, or green. They can still combine and give you a mix like the grid mix at your dispensing station. So do you think this can take off in terms of starting with a gray heavy mix probably of the hydrogen? I would also add one question there. How difficult it is in terms of doing kind of a centralized kind of supply chain like we have for fossil fuels as of now, where you have certain places where you are extracting, certain places where you are refining, far and few, and then the entire logistics network is there to distribute that fuel. In terms of if we start with gray hydrogen, that's going to be the model, I presume, right? Whereas when we talk about green hydrogen, possibly can be produced at many more places. The transportation part of it may not be a challenge there. I'm guessing here, of course, going out on a limb and guessing in that scenario. But what are your thoughts in terms of availability of hydrogen, not worrying about the mix as of today, with our traditional conventional model of distribution and transitioning? So what are the redundancies we may face? We will have to phase it out later, that you see also as a challenge.
Yeah, a very good question actually. So what when MNRE announced this hydrogen program, actually we were all part of these discussions and we had given significant inputs. Somehow they were not considered in their final report. But one thing was sure, that we had observed that there is a lot of waste hydrogen also being generated in India from chloralkali plants is there. Also, even refineries generate a lot of hydrogen during the process itself. When they are cracking the crude oils and all, it's all hydrocarbons cracking actually. And then they just flare off that hydrogen. They don't know what to do with it. They just burn it off. I mean, it's a criminal waste. So frankly speaking, we should really look at those sources first of all. Even though the base may be fossil, okay, it's fine. We call it gray. It may be from coal or it may be from oil, or so we'll have to look into that. Really means we have not worked out the full economics of that yet. I still feel there is a lot of open areas in that. Second aspect is there is a lot of agriculture based fuels such as bio CNG, for example, biogas as we call it in the language. So if you that crude biogas, if you refine it, it forms bio CNG, and that bio CNG can again then further be subjected to some treatment and you can have hydrogen there, even in the rural areas, strictly speaking. Biomass waste, waste-based biomass is a big problem in cities and many other places. They don't know what to do with that. They just burn it off, again creating air pollution issues. So these biomass conversion programs also, this was one of the deliverable of the hydrogen program. Can we look into producing producer gas from that, syngas as we call it, then extract hydrogen out of it? And so those kind of programs are there, and these are all feasible and possibilities. Now coming to green hydrogen, right now water seems to be the first element of choice, and again using solar, wind, or those kind of things. But there are many areas which have water scarcity even now. So we really don't know how much it will be successful. Then the extraction cost and all the capital costs associated with it. So to answer your question, yes, we should work with all possible sources. Hydrogen is colorless. We should not tag a color to it and then discriminate. So ideally, you should start using hydrogen, get familiar with it. What are the issues which will come out, and we can start working on it. Now, coming to one more point which was raised by Professor Karthik was in terms of regulation standard. So I am happy to tell you that all the rules and regulations regarding use of hydrogen as a IC engine fuel or a fuel cell fuel or as a blend with CNG has already been made. So here I played, as usual, a major role in that, and that is already notified also. So rule-wise, we are ready. Facility-wise, we are upgrading. So we are also investing in terms of upgradation of facility. So our hydrogen IC engine test cell is coming, a fuel cell facility is coming. We are also setting up a facility for the cylinder testing, apart from component testing facility, which we are upgrading for hydrogen. So facility-wise and all, we will be ready. Already the work is on. Even before anybody gave us the funding on our own funds, also we started working on it. And second point is, as from BS6 onwards, hydrogen is notified as a fuel. So post BS6, all the vehicles will be running on hydrogen. And there is one major element here which is slightly overlooked. Is OEs are very well equipped. They are ready to work, and many of them have come up with prototypes. And as rightly said, with Professor Karthik, will be very fast deployment. But there is one aspect, retrofitment. This is one thing which haunts all of us. And like, for example, always the discussion in the government circles is, okay, you are bringing a new hydrogen vehicle, which is fine, which is meeting all the rules and regulations. But what about the existing old vehicles which are on the road? What do you do with them? Because they are the ones which are source of pollution. So in that case, you are looking for retrofitment solutions. Can I convert those old vehicles to hydrogen? Now, there it's a very complex issue, because some of the vehicles, I'll say majority of the vehicles, are not maintained properly, especially commercial vehicles I'm talking about. As rightly said, they are always on the road. They are all being abused, I will say, not you overused, I'll say they're abused. And then what happens is their basic performance itself has deteriorated to a significant extent. Now, if you convert them to hydrogen, are they, first of all, conversion worthy? That is the first question. Second, whatever techniques you are using to convert, let us say it is a BS4 vehicle, for example. Now it is having an injection system. It is that way. It is quite sophisticated. Now you put some kit on it, which is not of the good grade or not this thing. So what will be the behavior of the converted vehicle? Now, supposedly a third party is doing this. So OEM is not blessing that whole activity. OEM says, okay, it is your risk. You take the third party kit, put it on my vehicle, but I am not responsible. And that is rightly so, because it is no longer their this thing. So in that case, in the field, there are a lot of issues coming out of such retrofitted vehicles. Now, we cannot stop retrofitment also. We tried that with CNG with BS6. We stopped retrofitment, but that didn't work. These guys went to court. They say, how you can discriminate against us? We are not allowed to do a legitimate business. Now, question remains, the vehicle is becoming smarter and smarter, and the users are becoming dumber and dumber. I will put it this way. So we really have to worry about all the different aspects of safety, operations. So it is not simple to do some jugaad and run that vehicle on hydrogen and then leave the safety to God. That is not feasible. So this is one major element which is going to make or break the transition to hydrogen for the existing vehicles, I'm saying. Now we are planning to allow BS4 vehicles to convert. We will not be definitely allowing BS2, BS3 old vehicles, particularly the carbureted ones are not at all suitable for hydrogen. So we don't anticipate any old vehicles going on hydrogen. But the new vehicles, relatively newer, I will say, few years ago, can be converted. And of course, new vehicles are, again, as per direct injection or multi-point fuel injection, whichever strategy they use, are allowed. So this is a very complex scenario, and we are really kind of debating within even the government circles what measures should be there, how should the way be there, because there is a big demand from some of the fleet owners, truck fleet owners, that they want to convert en masse vehicles from diesel to hydrogen. And when we are going for conversions, again, these all kinds of issues will come in. But as far as ARI is concerned, we are ready to certify all kinds of vehicle, whether it's a converted OE or this thing. But these are some of the real challenges which I feel are important to address. And as I said, again, any hydrogen quality is fine. It's not a problem. Engine is a very robust power plant, whether it's 98%, 97%, green, gray, black, blue, whatever you want to bring it, no problem. But the issue is, again, safety. So these are some of the thoughts which I have.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for those inputs. And yes, the safety part is often the concern, even with Karthik also said that the intentions are not in question here, particularly when we talk about the truck manufacturers, or even I would say to that extent even the fuel suppliers, but with the retrofit manufacturers as well. But that's where if those are uh, you know uh, even we know that the testing that would be done for approving a certain retrofitment kit, and the risk, the liabilities, how they will pan up. Now, in terms of hydrogen, I would presume even the fuel system, the fuel tank itself and the delivery system is also going to be way more complex as compared to even CNG or even LNG, I would say. And it's also going to be much more risky. See, we talk about CNG or LNG leak. Yes, it's a greenhouse gas, but immediate threat is not there, right? Immediate threat in terms of something catching fire and there being a incident like that, as compared to say hydrogen. So Karthik, if I may bring you in there, how do we deal with this scenario where there would be, and there already are, players who would want to convert diesel vehicles to hydrogen, and it will be looked upon as a way to accelerate, just like in electric vehicles, it might be looked upon as a way to accelerate adoption. But then these risks, how do we handle them? How do we make sure that uh, uh, the right parties are liable, are held liable, and also they are held responsible, not waiting for an incident to happen, but then ensuring that there are no slip-ups in the first place. So, any thoughts on that? I know again it's a bit of speculative game here, but I think this is more immediate in those terms, because there are, as Dr. Ripse said, there are people who are looking to do that as a business.
I'm guessing that to a great extent, except that the material engineering and probably the fitment, you're talking about having those vehicles retrofitted, right? And that's what you're talking about, right? So, to a great extent, I would want to pretend at least that it's very close to the levels of risk as it was in CNG. But just don't go back to the OEM about that risk. That's the point. He's not controlling that vehicle anymore, right? So if you see merit in taking a retrofitment thing, there will be, I remember the number of CNG bus fires. So, and those are OEM made. But the retrofitment kits, they're all small vehicles, and you haven't heard of the fires. But then, if you ask for somebody to give a report saying, "Tell me there were zero fires in retrofitted CNG cars," the guy will not give it to you because the data was not there, and it didn't. It was not a favorite in the WhatsApp university, or it never got the publicity that the others got. And always, from what I have seen, at least OEMs are very convenient, beating the dolls or whatever you want to call it. You can go crazy over them, and and the OEMs will be nice about it. But the rest of the guys will probably, have alternate treatments for you. So the point is, I don't think that there will be too much of a difference if we go about it the CNG way. Right, there's not going to be too much. Of course, the material engineering is going to be different because hydrogen is going to make quite a few materials brittle. So you're going to have to necessarily engineer it differently. But then these people who are doing retrofitments are not really idiots. It's not as though they will put the normal stuff there. But from what I'm seeing, it's not the same combustion engine. See, the diesel to CNG, the combustion engine was pretty close to each other. But if you use that, you're going to be at this 6 kind of kilometers per kg, and you're not going to make money sense. If you want to be at the 10, 11 kilometers per kg, it's convenient to call it a combustion engine, but it is a slightly different animal for hydrogen. So retrofitment onto a existing engine in hydrogen's case can be a desperate measure for something, but it will work, but it will not perform, if you know what I mean. And remember, in most cases, these trucks are essentially business assets. There's no personal passion there. There's no other emotion. It's just a money making thing. Just like I buy a CNC machining center or a lathe or whatever, right? I buy a truck and I make money using the truck. That's all it is. There's nothing else to it. So I have a feeling that it's likely to be different from CNG. We don't know the details yet because the hydrogen combustion engine development is more in media than in the production lines right now. Everybody is talking about having done it. But if it is so good, there must have been guys who have started deploying it for business. Right now, from what I have seen, globally itself, these guys, the Leyland guys, seem to be fairly close to a hydrogen combustion engine, which is still a long way off in terms of efficiencies. And the Cummins guys have just about started, and you've got AVL others. Everybody's in articles, writing articles and media coverage stage. So it's going to be a bit more mature before we can actually take a conclusive call. But my feeling is the engine is going to be a different animal compared to the diesel. It's not the CNG and diesel proximity in the combustion engine. I don't think we'll see that proximity between the hydrogen and the diesel engines. There's going to be a significant amount of difference. So even if you get the rest of it, you won't get the engine, right? And the CNG kit was all about everything about other than the engine. They didn't bring the engine on. The kit was everything other than the engine. Here may not be the case, but you don't know, do you? It's too early to answer that question with full confidence.
Right, right. And there is also that kind of transition thing also, where we talked about blended fuel in terms of CNG and hydrogen. Maybe with a low
Yeah.
percent of hydrogen, it may work.
Once again, I think this is something, of course, it's getting a lot of media, but I think once again, I think it's more with the fuel guy, and he's got to make up his mind. And having made up his mind, we need to start having those powertrains developed, right? So I have a feeling this will also continue to be a lot in the limelight. You'll see some pilot of 50 vehicles, etc. India sells 130,000 trucks every year. Doing a 50 truck pilot is not demonstration of the feasibility or the viability of a technology, right? So I think it's there. I don't see any fantastic fiscal merit in that route. And in trucking, I think fiscal merit is important.
Right.
Right. Passenger vehicles, no, but in trucking, I think fiscal merit is everything else has an influence, but that is after you have crossed the viability gate. In trucking business, if you have not crossed the viability gate, the other criteria for decision you don't even meet, because this itself kind of sends you away. The money is the gate there, money making. It's a for-profit product, right? So we have to be so I'm not very bullish about the flexi fuel option as a large market happening. Right? I'm not convinced. Happy to be convinced, right? It's not as though I'm ruling it out, but I'm just not seeing the evidence for it. I'm not even seeing the indicators for it, right? And so we need to start putting the money, at least today, you need to start putting the money where the customer is going to need it. That's your job as a fuel supplier or as a vehicle maker. You need to do things that your customer wants. You don't get to control and say what he should do. So this is not. It's a free economy. There are no licenses, etc. So the customer is not going to see fuel. So he's not going to ask for these vehicles. Is our take. But you know what? If he's doing it, I'm already ready. I've come this far. I just have to travel another 6 months and I'll be ready for production. I've come that far and I'm going to wait. I'm not going to keep throwing more money at it. I need more evidence before I can take it to a production line, establish. My suppliers also have to spend time, right? They have to spend money establishing the supply chain, making commitments. If you don't give them the order, that line is going to be a idle line, right? It's very unfair. So these things are all fairly complex. Market driven is the nicest way. Exploring options is fine. We should continue doing that. I don't think you should give up on options, but going all the way and demanding availability of the vehicle in numbers at the dealership, I think is a very wrong approach. It'll just bring the whole economy down.
Sure. And I'll just bring ourselves to that last question before I take up the audience question. We are around 15 minutes away. So Dr. Dipse, there is also this concern when we have these kind of transitions between fuels, between technologies, that we get stuck in the intermediate because it makes sense. So for example, if somehow it makes economic sense for this mixed fuel, maybe, I don't know, 20% hydrogen, 80% CNG, and it clicks, but that is not serving our greater goal of transitioning to a zero emission fuel eventually. So how do we address that in terms of I don't know, policy or regulations, in terms of bringing in some of the mandates probably later, but going through our usual phase of voluntary and then mandating some mix of fuel or some mix of fleet, which is being tried out in California. In fact, also they are trying out having different taxations on the fuels which are low carbon against high carbon or zero carbon. So how do you see that in terms of relevance to India first, of course, and then how do you see us navigating through this chance of us getting stuck at an intermediate stage, because it is accepted, people have the tendency to let things run. I have transitioned once, don't ask me to transition immediately further. How do we deal with this?
Yeah. So your question is very appropriate. First thing is that we are always having a comfort zone, whether we are as a user or operator or fleet owner. Basically, they want minimum changes and then my vehicle should be worthy of running. I'm talking about mostly regulation or meeting some kind of future things, or fuel efficiency guidelines or those kind of things. So minimum technology changes are most welcome. even by all parties, because there is a minimum cost impact, and again it is all economics. Now coming to your question regarding these transition technologies, so what happens is sometimes the transitioning to a totally new technology becomes difficult. So people try to experiment with this transition technology, for example, whether it's a flex fuel or a hydrogen CNG or those kind of things. But I agree that the cost to benefit ratio has to be looked into, because if we are really making some incremental changes, whether it is really benefiting in the long run has to be looked into. Because just making some changes and adopting something which is for a short period really doesn't make sense. I'd rather have a full transition to that technology. Example I'll give you. We have talking about hydrogen CNG mixing for a very long time now. We also worked in ARI from 2010. Somehow that technology didn't work. One was that because of the density difference of hydrogen and CNG, and then if you take a separate hydrogen stream and take a CNG stream, blend it, cost economics doesn't work out. Then they looked upon whether we can produce hydrogen from CNG and mix it in one step. So like the IOC reformer they developed. But that also didn't take up too much extent, because the emission wise hardly few percentage reduction in emission, and cost wise there is an increase. It doesn't make sense, and performance wise it is within margin of error, frankly speaking. So such technology will not sustain in the long run. Whereas we would have rather invested in hydrogen, I'll say, and go on ahead and with the risk involved and all, go ahead with a full product. So that is one thing. Now coming to the question, how government can promote such thing. First of all, it's my belief that government should not dictate any technology. They should set a bar for emission, that this is the bar of cleanliness I want. And then whatever technology meets that bar, it should be allowed. That is the one thing. So today we have BS6 phase 2. We are talking Euro 7, maybe BS7 will come in same time. And now all the vehicles which are running are already clean. Even I'll say diesel vehicle is already beating BS6. So it is clean anyway. It is not going to be like that old smoky vehicle which you have your mindset, So all technologies which can compete and meet the requirements of the land should be allowed. That is one. So in that case, if government really wants to sweeten the pie for a particular technology, they can give indirect swaps, in the sense maybe give some benefit in terms of road tax. Now subsidies are gone. Nobody is going to subsidize anything. Even electric vehicle subsidies are also disappearing. And the already diesel petrol is market rate. Gas was never at subsidy rate. So it is all open market prices. And this is a trend which will continue, because that technology has to be sustainable economically also. Only then it will have its share. Nobody will, have something which is very expensive. Nobody will run it, even though there is a government. So one of the thing about electric is their forecasts were very aggressive, and somehow the penetration is not following the forecast. And now they are talking hybrid and other solutions, which initially they dismissed as non-performers. So now there is this debate going on whether we should go full swing or not. But government can do one thing: they can make conducive atmosphere by taking certain steps. And again, as I said, educating the customers. They can't force them, but they can explain to them, look, this is beneficial for you in the long run. And each market is different. So I will say, I will divide the automotive industry in market segment. So what works for a small commercial car will not work for heavy duty, or will not work for a two-wheeler, or will not work for a off-highway vehicle. So all will have their own solutions, which seem feasible, economically viable. So from that angle, I will say, and customers are quite smart. They know what works, what doesn't work, how economics work. So these guys are very smart. They will take the proper solution. Even if the government forces a particular thing, they will not go by that route. Of course, if it is beneficial, yes. But as I said, somewhat driven by policy, but definitely not through regulations or any kind of thing. And some kind of awareness, or you say international, kind of coding, that may help in terms of adopting a particular technology. But intermediate solutions, ideally, we should not get stuck into it. I don't want to say discourage, But really, we don't find much benefit in, like, for example, dual fuel is another technology. It didn't succeed at all. And they will just do dual fuel and run on diesel. Then what is the point of that? So really, some of the technologies didn't work in the Indian scenario, especially. And we have a very complicated and a very vast kind of array of markets. And every market has its own challenge. And maybe urban market is different, rural market is different, the semi-urban, everything is different. All kinds of solutions, mobility solutions are there. And we cannot simply categorize them as this will work, that will work. So finally, it's all local conditions. And whatever technology is available at what cost will decide. But people, if they want to change, they would like to change in one go. They would avoid, doing it again and again. Example was that when we shifted from E10 to E20, government was saying we'll bring E12, we'll bring E15, and we'll go to E20. OEM said we'll go mad. How many times we'll calibrate? And the customer also will not like it. So as you transition, you decide one blend E20, okay, by such and such date, we'll go to E20. That's it, matter clear. So they transition straight from E10 to E20. And now there is no confusion in anybody's mind. The OEMs are geared up, everybody is geared up, supply chains are geared up. So this is how it should be. They really should not go for any intermediate things. You should go direct for the final solution, is what I feel. And government should, kind of incentivize something in some form or the other. That is how it can be done. Yes.
Sure, sure, sure. Sure. Thanks for that insight, and thanks for aligning us how the policies should facilitate the transition rather than force. Oftentimes, particularly segments which are livelihood based, this forcing won't work. Obviously, yeah, it has to make economic sense. But Karthik also previously mentioned that it has to work out in the end for the user, and it should at least maintain, if not enhance, the margins that he is operating as of now. Great. So we'll take quickly a few of the questions from the audience now. One of the questions is about multiple successful case studies or pilots where hydrogen power transportation has been demonstrated in various regions. What I'm aware of is, and as Karthik also rightly pointed out, they have been largely fuel cell based, and they have been small fleets, be it China, the logistics company which ran, I think, a 20 fuel cell truck, pilot, or be it things happening in Europe, again, even smaller fleets, even very specific area of operation, very predictable. So these are, I would say, not very confidence inspiring, but they are start of some sort. So I would like to hear from each of you in your again to your knowledge. Are there any really large scale pilots that have been tried out around the world, from which we can learn and at least design our pilots or our initial case studies around those learnings? Maybe Dr. Hipse, if you can start, and then Karthik, if you can add to that.
Yeah, actually, there have been pilots done all over the place, but really they are not, one can't call them large. I will say proto fleet kind of thing, some 30, 40, 100 vehicles, 50 vehicles. This is the scale in which they have operated. And some people have not even reached that scale. They are just having a proto vehicle. For example, Toyota had its Mirai for a very long time. They developed it long back, but they did not introduce it because it did not make any commercial sense at all. Now is when they are now slowly entering into that this thing. So technology was there already there. Even hydrogen IC engine, nobody was discussing hydrogen IC engine till few years back. Actually, that whole discussion started because there was a diesel ban being talked in Europe. That diesel IC will be banned from such and such date, maybe 2035, or I don't know exact number. So that spilled over that let us have some alternative fuel source, and then people started talking hydrogen IC engine, and then suddenly interest spawned and everybody started working in a big way. Big shots like Cummins, and many other global players went in, Caterpillar, John Deere, everybody started working on a particular technology in terms of hydrogen. Also in terms of other sectors like marine and as you said, Jen said, power generation, also people started experimenting. But to answer your question, I have not found any large pilot as such. Whatever have been pilot studies have been done in particular this thing. Again, some of them have gone ahead, some of them have not. But I still feel there is 3 to 4 years gestation period. Even our Indian OEMs also had done pilot work. For example, there was this fuel cell bus from Tata Motors which was tried out. Then the Ashok Leyland also did some work. Then a lot of work on other fuel, also similar pilot kind of studies. But really speaking, I'm not fully aware of any large pilot, and we really have not there. I feel still there's a way to go, and there's a lot of things which need to be done before we can really say yes, this is a deployable technology. And mind you, we will have to not only run the pilot in a particular location, we have to run it all over the place, because you have to see whether it is working well in a desert, it is working on a hill, whether it's working on a coastal road, whether it is working in some kind of remote rural setting. So it takes time, because that data collection, development, all this is very time consuming. There's a lot of feedback required. Somehow we have not reached that stage. And now actually in that National Green Hydrogen Mission, this is one point that they are going to keep a lot of pilots in a large scale, and they will support financially also some of the pilots. So that is something which is being looked into. That is my take on this.
Sure. Karthik, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, so hydrogen combustion engine, there's nothing. I think the largest market news, not necessarily activity, is the one between Ashok Leyland and Reliance. I'm not aware of how far it's gone, etc. But two big guys, so they'll make something happen. If you look at hydrogen fuel cell and you're talking pilots, etc., I'm guessing the purpose of asking about the pilot is to have learnings. Right? So there are significant numbers running in China, but that is not a place you can learn from. It's a fairly closed ecosystem for information and access and language and all that. So it's going to be difficult to learn from those, but there are a fair number of them in China. And they've been, I think, close to us now. So that's about, you've probably got about 50 to 100 heavy vehicles, combination of trucks and buses, and probably more, but you have no learning opportunity there, so no point in talking about it. All the other places, I think Dr. Tipse was, I'm on the same page. There's really nothing where you can learn, and here the learning in the context of Indian conditions is also something where there's no running away from it. You have to do it yourself and learn. So unlike before, where you are always trying to catch up with technology 15 years later, etc., these days India is trying to catch up with technology within a couple of years. And if you want to do that, you should stop relying on learning from others, and you should have your plans to learn yourself. So I don't think there is any pilot worth talking about in terms of learning. So there are two things. The pilots that come in media are media releases. They have a purpose and they have a certain criteria on interpreting facts. The other one is learning is for the engineering team, the quality team, the reliability guys, the safety guys, etc. Those guys need real things happening on the ground to learn. That is no significant activity going on for trucks. Not for learning purposes. For media release and all that, you have enough. But for learning safety and reliability and quality and all that, you don't have any pilots of significance.
Right. Yeah. Great. Looking through some of the other questions, I'll take one for benefit of time. In terms of hydrogen, we talked about having different sources of hydrogen, using them how much benefit can we derive in the cost of hydrogen? Because most of the studies, including ours, has been basis the cost of green hydrogen, and the cost is also very important, if not the important factor. So if we talk about, say, a certain mix of gray and green, how much does it impact? So what is the cost of gray hydrogen versus green? And of course, Dr. Ripse, you talked about some of the hydrogen which comes out as waste and otherwise is flared could be captured and utilized and deployed. So going from that extreme to green, the other extreme, how do you see, if you have information on how they pan up as costs?
Yeah, we had worked out some of the cost estimates for our facility also, and then we had submitted some estimates to MNRE. We had discussion with a lot of players. So green hydrogen, as per our estimate right now, lies between somewhere like 500 to 600 rupees a kg. Is a fair estimate for green hydrogen. I'm talking all the costs, including everything, which works out to that. Then as far as the blue hydrogen, I will say it comes around 300 to 350 rupees a kg as of now. That is one of the figures I'm quoting from a government report itself. And gray hydrogen will be even cheaper. I will expect somewhere like 150 to 200 rupees as of now. The cost associated with that is mostly the cleanup costs. For example, if you say chloralkali plants, that contains a lot of chlorine, other, those kind of things which have to clean up, remove, purify, and then kind of bottle it, in the sense you have to put it in the compression and give it. So these are the costs associated with that processing rather. So I feel if we are able to come, ideal state would be if we come near somewhere 100 rupees a kg, somewhat near CNG, or maybe even slightly higher than CNG is fine. So that should be the aspirational figure of 100 to 125. And so far, I have heard of people coming up to 200. That is what I was told with gray hydrogen. And if that is the case, then seems to be achievable. Green hydrogen has a long way to go. I'm not a critic of green hydrogen, but I'll say green hydrogen, there's a lot of investment, a lot of planning, cost associated, transportation, everything together. Frankly speaking, I don't see it becoming economically viable immediately, unless government pitches in some money and says, yes, we will really subsidize it, which I don't see it is happening. They are talking about subsidizing, but they are not doing any real steps are not being taken right now. So if we go as per current estimates, that is the figures which I feel based on what we have learned or our experience. Again, it's open to debate, but that is a ballpark figure I will say. I'll give you like that.
Sure. Thanks on that. And one kind of last question, Karthik, if you may try and address that. Uh, uh, all of this technology, as you also mentioned previously, takes money and resources to develop. And right now, not having the visibility, their manufacturers and in fact even the fuel guys are spread thin. Even the distribution, I would say, would come next, and they would also find it as a challenge. How do you think the private sector, or even I would say the grant money that comes in, how it can be channelized to be invested into these one-time costs, right? More of design, development, engineering costs, rather than subsidizing the fuel, the operating cost, which become crutches and which doesn't really make a sustainable business model for the user. So, Karthik, if you can give your views on that before we close.
Really not very sure and not very clear, because I do not know enough about the development side. But one thing we have to see, finally, if let's say hydrogen is being sold at $2 per kg, as it is getting pumped into the vehicle. I'm not talking about being produced at the electrolyzer, but you're pumping it in at about $2. A very small part of that will be the upfront engineering and development cost. It will probably be just 5 cents or 3 cents. It will be a very small amount. But the point is, to get there, this is a significant amount of money that you're putting in for development, even though it doesn't reflect as a big cost there. So this is more a risk mitigation tool rather than a cost reduction tool. What you're doing now by funding development and upfront investments, right? This is a risk mitigation step. The people who are willing to take the risk of doing it, you help them with the risk. The Indian government currently does not have a track record of having supported profit-making businesses with risk mitigation funding. The Indian government doesn't have a track record. It's a fairly common practice in Europe and the US, but in India, there is a lot of stigma attached for various reasons. So it's not as though it's some blind, stupid policy. For various reasons, the average government official will shy away from proposing a subsidy for a profit-making entity. It's something which people can easily pick up and twist it around in a newspaper statement and make a scandal out of it. So the official wants no such risks, right? He's there for another purpose, not to take these risks. So it's going to be difficult to fund upfront risk mitigation. It's going to be easier to fund end product, and that itself we have a very poor track record. The ACC is the first instance where subsidy has been given to the profit maker with a clear purpose to build competence. This is the first time a bold policy like that has come out in India, even though such things have existed all over the place. So the PLI schemes, right?
Right.
The other demand incentives, if you see, they've either gone to the state transport undertakings or they've gone to the public. So it's funding the public, funding government entities, etc. There, but if a government entity spends the money on engineering, how much of it is private going to take and go forward? I have my own doubts. Each guy would like to do that and own it himself, right? So it's a little difficult to fund this part. It's easier to fund the end demand product.
Right. True. Great. All right. So, as much as we would like to continue the discussion, we would like to close for now here. We'll probably have some follow-up later in time. But thanks a lot for joining. I see Kurt couldn't make it, but it was really great discussing with both of you on multiple aspects. And of course, we are not aiming to conclude anything here. Of course, a lot of ifs and buts, lot of ambiguity still exists. But I think key takeaways for today's discussion should be keeping the options open, working, starting the work with what we have in terms of hydrogen supply, in terms of getting the technology up there. And then also working on the right approach in terms of promoting the adoption, not really working too much into making the businesses over dependent on subsidies, both in terms of fuel or purchase cost, but at the same time making sure that the technology becomes affordable and people are motivated to adopt it. So thanks a lot once again for joining today.
Thank you.
And sharing thoughts. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.